I am the Lord. I will free you from the burden of Egypt and deliver you from slavery to them. I am the Lord. I will free you from the burden of Egypt and deliver you from the slavery of them. Exodus chapter 6, verse 6. Today we start to observe the Feast of Emancipation, and this brings with it a number of things. We came across a story a few weeks ago, which I'll share with you, and the story is told of a young man who worked at a barbecue restaurant, and his job was doing whatever his boss told him to do. And one busy Friday night, he was clearing tables, and the boss ran up to him and said, "We're in trouble. We're out of quarters and customers are waiting," and handed him two $50 bills and said, "Go next door and get $100 worth." And the young man ran off to the grocery store, and the cashier told him that she was not permitted to give so much change. He ran to the gas station, and he was met with the same response, and he was running from business to business. And about 30 minutes later, he returned with $100 worth in quarters, and he presented them to the boss, and in anger, he asked, "What is this? I wanted chicken quarters, not coins." That, in many regards, is us when we speak about grace. That, in many regards, is us when we speak about emancipation, or even when we speak about freedom. Because just like him, he heard about quarters. He didn't know what quarters the boss wanted. A lot of us have heard about freedom, but very few of us have experienced freedom. We are called, therefore, to stand fast in the liberty wherewith Christ has made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. It is almost as if we have begged and pleaded God for deliverance, so we are free to go into slavery again. We need to understand that through emancipation, through what happened by Jesus, through what happened to the Israelites out of Egypt, through what happens to us on a daily basis, the door is open. But we simply refuse to walk through. There's a piece of technology used for training animals where a collar is placed around the neck of the animal, and a range is set for the animal to wander. Now the collar delivers an electrical pulse, and the closer the animal gets to the limit of that range, the stronger the pulse is. Now with time, the animal gets to know its limits, and it is trained in what to do and what not to do. We all wear an invisible collar around our neck called sin. But it has been deactivated by grace, amazing grace, and unfortunately the majority of persons around us have not experienced amazing grace. And they encourage us to stay within certain perimeters, and instead of enjoying the freedom won for us through Jesus Christ, we spend a lifetime confined to the yard by fear, living with reservation and doubt. There is such a unique perspective of reference of the Jews enslaved by the Egyptians, and the Africans, Native Americans, and Amerindians by the Europeans. When we look into the Bible narrative and the documented experience of our forefathers, we see clearly that there are social, psychological, religious, philosophical dimensions of the slave experience and the mentality. It impacted on them, and it has impacted on us as well. The linkage between the slavery of the Israelites and that of the Africans is nothing new. Just as the Israelites desired to be free, The story of their exodus from Egypt resonated with our ancestors when they found themselves in bondage in a strange land. It is quite amazing that our African ancestors were taught a form of Christianity that would make them better tools of service for their oppressors, yet adopted a theology of liberation that would not accept slaves be obedient to your masters as a derivative to remain in bondage. They developed a philosophy that supported the eradication of the racist institution of slavery that kept them from being free. And their God desired them to be, just as he desires us to be. But does that still pertain? When we are emancipated from something, or indeed from someone, we are freed from the restraint, the control, or power of another. Emancipation means you are free from certain influences and bondages. But are we really? Have we embraced what has been won for and given to us? Actually, we're all guilty at some point of walking back into or wanting to be back in slavery. Remember the Israelites in bondage, making bricks from straw. And they cried out, and God heard and sent Moses and Aaron to lead them out with dry feet. And quick like that, they forgot the hardship, the whips across their backs, the parting of the Red Sea, the deliverance from the pursuing army. And not even when things got tough, just as their environment changed, they started to complain. They bring us out here to starve to death. When we were in Egypt, at least we could sit by the flesh pots. We had onions and we had leeks. And suddenly, slavery seemed a good thing. When they were in Egypt, they were slaves, oppressed, beaten, treated like nothing. But they were willing to go back, simply because they did not understand, neither did they accept the amazing grace. And neither do many of us. One of our biggest oppressors is the church of the past, and our desire to have it back. But what about the church of the present? What are we doing now for others to look back and be inspired? Short answer, in many places, nothing. We have dwindling and aging uniform organizations whose major activity is celebrating longevity. Because many of them have served in their time and unfortunately are forced to serve in our time as well. Because no one was or is willing to step forward, and in many cases, those who step are turned back. Our mind is our biggest oppressor. Our thoughts. We are a people enslaved to traditions, a people who have accepted church and what we believe to be Anglicanism, but a people who have not accepted Jesus Christ. We make big issues out of the use of incense, the ringing of bells, seasonal colors, traditional and contemporary music, whatever that is, when to genuflect, when to bow, what is to be said and what is to be sung, when it is to be said and when it is to be sung. But the things that really matter, respect for one another, missing from church. Love for one another, missing from church. Encouragement, encourage one another with these words, missing from church. If you are illiterate and you come to church, you might think that the fruit of the Spirit is gossip, lies, arrogance, deceit, contentiousness, rumors, unforgiveness, and cliques. This is where we find ourselves claiming and playing church. We speak about love, but we love a few. That then determines who is respected or disrespected, and that opens the door for who is encouraged or discouraged. Slaves, emancipated, but imprisoned in our own minds, willing to sing, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds, but quite unwilling to act, to live as those who have been set free. We are made to be free. In fact, we need freedom. Every person needs freedom. That is obvious. That's what God has made us for. When you really think about it, what is the purpose of your life? Did God put us here to be miserable? Did God put us here to be sad? Did God put us here to wish and want for something and to live oppressed? That is not why God has put us here. That is not our purpose. Our purpose is to live out the freedom won for us in Jesus Christ. Our purpose is joy, to bring joy, to share joy. But we somehow wallow in things we have no business with. The scripture says, for freedom, Christ has set us free. We say we want to be free. We want to be free. But therein lies a problem. The problem is that it is not the whole truth. We don't always want to be free. We don't always want to be released from the things that hold us back. Freedom sounds wonderful, but freedom also frightens us. Does anybody here see themselves as Moses? Anybody? Can you liken yourself to Moses? The leaders of the organizations, you don't see yourself as Moses? What about the priests? You see priests as Moses? I see many priests as Moses, because the people can get the vets and then they can get to see the promised land. The thing is, we don't have anybody willing to step up on the limb and to play the part of Moses. Everybody wants to follow. But in following lies the problem. We ain't too sure who leading. Or, where we're being led, we don't necessarily want to go. You see, I will step up on the limb, and I will liken myself to Moses. That might offend some, but we'll move along. And that is because I know there is so much ahead that I can lead you to, because God is in our midst. And hence we need to believe that. But some of us want to go back. I will tell you no. Try all you will. There is no way back. There is only a way forward. Because we are children of God, and God is leading us forward. The thing is, if you don't come along, you might get dragged along. If you don't get dragged along, then you might be left behind. That is just how it works with God. I invite you to listen to yourself. And this is something we'll do later on, but we can do it this morning. You can do it during the course of the week. Listen to yourself. Listen to your thoughts. Listen to the things that come out of your mouth. Because in listening to ourselves, we get to hear God. If we can begin with declaring our availability to God, as Moses said, "Here I am, Lord," then God will respond with his declaration that he has a place for us in his plan. "I am the God of your father, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." God does not treat us as if we are but a speck of dust in the vastness of the universe. No, God shows us that we have a place in his plan. In one way or another, every time we listen to ourselves, we hear the voice of God calling us to responsibility. Moses phrased it, "Who am I that I should go to Egypt and bring out the Israelites from slavery?" Who am I? When we hear that call to responsibility, however inadequate we feel, still we are buttressed and supported by the dynamic, enabling presence of the Ancient of Days, whose great word is simply, "I am. I am who I am. Tell them that I am sent you." That means that the presence of God is with us. The presence of God does not enslave us, it sets us free. We are made to be free. In fact, we need to be free. Every person needs freedom. But that is our problem. We don't really want to be free. You see, there are reasons both internal and external why you and I don't like freedom. There are reasons both inside of our hearts as well as in the outside circumstances that explain why we are having a hard time with the freedom which God offers. Moses has heard the wonderful promise of God. Moses has discovered that God is offering the people freedom and has promised it in every kind of way imaginable. I'm not sure if you notice how many times in this passage you come across the phrase, "I will." God promises that He will free His people. Now that ought to be good news, but somehow it is not. Moses, profoundly stirred and deeply excited by God's gracious offer, goes out and tells the people, can't you imagine it? Bravely, Moses goes out to tell them there's nothing that this God cannot do. There's good news. A better day is coming. You're going to be free. But listen to this wet blanket response. They would not listen to Moses because of their broken spirit and their cruel slavery. They would not listen to Moses or listen to freedom because of their broken spirit and their cruel slavery. They had both an internal problem and an external problem. They could not hear the message of freedom because of what was wrong on the inside, a broken spirit. And what was wrong on the outside, cruel slavery. Is this why we have not accepted our own freedom? Is this why others have not and cannot accept freedom? We can break the cycle by choosing to be the good news for someone. The thing is, I believe you break down the threat to yourself by working from someone else's freedom. You may not fully believe that you are free. You may think that you yourself are in a bad shape. But if you can do something to make a difference in somebody's life, then you can begin to hear the sounds of freedom for yourself. When the people would not hear him, Moses complained to God, and God said, Moses, go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. Just do something. Go strike a blow for freedom, whether they want it or not. The same call is for us. Do something. It is not enough to sit and to complain about what is happening and what is not happening. We are the ones who are free. Each and every one of us can play the role of Moses. Each and every one of us has the ability to step out and to lead somebody out of the slavery in which they find themselves. But we want to follow. through the salvation of Jesus Christ, we are all free. Therefore, there's no bondage to us. There's nothing keeping us back. The world, therefore, needs to look at us or see us as an example because we are showing them what to do. But are we? Because in many places, we miss what has to be done. Just do something. Share the freedom which has been won for us. Share the joy which we possess. We are a people that are free, not enslaved, not confined, not condemned, not oppressed. We need therefore to ask ourselves, why do we behave the way we behave? Why do we look the way that we look? If we understand the freedom won for us through Jesus Christ, is there any reason to be sad? Is there any reason to hold our head down instead of holding our heads up? We need to understand where we are in the grand scheme of things. God is calling on each of us to go to whichever Pharaoh there is and tell him or her, let my people go. It is left up to us, therefore, to respond. Stop behaving as if we have the world on our shoulders and we're wallowing in some strange depression when we're not. God has set us free. The amazing grace of Jesus Christ has won for us freedom. Let us live in that freedom. I invite you now to turn to hymn 496.